Commerce. Just want to thank you all and appreciate all our elected officials being here just to follow up on what happened in Charleston this most recent session. So with that being said, I don't know if there's agenda who's going first or if you guys want to figure that out.
I'm sorry.
So
There are also waters here. If anybody's waiting.
and Randy's got his snack there, so he's ready to go.
Yeah, got out my own table. All right. That's awesome.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Wish everyone knows we've been back, what, three weeks now? Something like that.
Roughly.
3 weeks. And it was we'll say unique session. That'd be a good way to. It was a little different than session past. It's like we didn't, there wasn't really any, usually you go into session with a whole list of priorities, which everybody does, has their own priorities, but I mean, must do, get done stuff. And it was, session started out for probably the first 2 or 3 weeks was really, I mean, the slowest session that I'd seen since I'd been there. I mean, there was a lot of people down there. We was meeting with a lot of stakeholders on different bills and different groups, but as far as the session, it seemed like it took forever for the session to gear up. We didn't really, usually we have, protesters, a lot of protesters down there. And this year, it was, I'd have to say this session, this quiet session I had in 12 years. And that I've been there. But with that being said, we still passed 279 bills, 156 from the Senate and 123 from the House. But a lot of those bills was appropriation bills and promulgating rules, which for Senate Bill 2 is authorizing the DEP to promulgate rules. So them bills really don't do anything, but just part of the process. And then, of course, for several weeks, the moonshine bill was probably the most exciting bill we had. I mean, as far as, controversial. But
I forgot about that.
yeah, I
It kinda-
I forgot about it. In fact,
It was so early on.
we was given a summary of the bills of our Senate communication director put out a list of all the bills that was passed and the ones that was vetoed. There was 6 bills vetoed. And I have the veto letters with me. So if anybody wants to look at, the bills that was, I can share that with you. I can also share this list with you if you give me if you'd like to have a copy of it. It's 9 pages. Like I said, 279 bills, and I didn't
bring them up for everybody.
no, I didn't know how many I was going to need, but I can email. You give me your, if you wanted, I can email it to you and give you the digital copy, or I can give it to someone if they want to print something out here today, however you want to do it. But, a lot of our, a lot of the problem was, of course, it's election year. So on election year, people don't want to stick their neck out voting for or against something. So leadership is really careful about what bills they run, what bills they don't run. I mean, that's just the politics of it. And another thing, of course, I mean, no matter how you feel about the governor, that's none of my business, but I'll never be so glad to see anybody leave that office and than I will this gentleman here. He overspent, what was it, 388 million? I think it was three.
The original, yeah.
Yeah, originally, from the state of the state, he promised $388 million more than what we was budgeted for. So that's always a bad thing, because then when you don't do it, then you got to explain to people why you didn't do it. But $388 million is a lot of money to come up with to try to fill a budget. Unlike the federal government, our Constitution, we have to have a balanced budget before we can leave session. So someone always has to be the adult in the room. And with this governor, it's always the legislatures and he always says, well, I tried to give it to you, but they wouldn't agree to it. So a lot of that goes on. But we had a lot of good bills didn't run or died because of the price tag that was put on them, because we was, trying to fill a $388 million gap. Of course, some of it just, when it came right down to it, it wasn't the whole 388 million, because a lot of it, we just said, no, there's no way we can do that. Anything that had a tax break or, pretty well died. A lot of good bills. One was the child care tax credit, which would have been a huge bill for the business community, or, just people in general, people that, in the workforce, because that's a huge problem is child care. And we had a bill to add the tax credit. And of course, did it pass out of the House? I think it passed out of the House maybe and came to the Senate and died in the Senate.
Yeah, the adults are usually in the house.
Yeah, well, no. The adult.
I know there was a bill on each side. I know there was a bill on each side, but I don't know which one got crossed over, so.
But with that being said, the House, it's, they're sort of a little bit like the governor. They're just write a check. So the Senate, we have to be the adults in the House and stop a lot of it. What was the first bill? Hey, what was the first bill you guys passed? I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't a bad bill, but there's no way we could afford it. Was the teacher pay raised the minimum or the base salary up to 60,000 for starting teachers or something like that. That was,
He never passed nothing like that. Something came from the Senate.
that came out, that was the first bill that came out of finance.
I'll guarantee you it didn't come out of
Is this how it works in Charleston too?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the way it does.
Absolutely. Pass that. I
Well,
don't know.
it came out of one committee in the House. It did come out of one committee in the House. You're probably right. It wasn't finance, but it's education. That's right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I believe that.
Well, I'm just using that as an
Yeah, I'm
example.
on that committee.
It was fine. But it sounds good and everybody there would love to do it, but I'm just saying, they pass stuff with, and both sides does it, they pass stuff to make it sound good and know it's not going anyplace, but the small business, we can't even spend the money on small businesses that, there's $50 million there that we're supposed to be able to, that's supposed to go directly to small businesses. And I worked with 3 small businesses this year, from 2 in Preston County and 1 in Hardy County, trying to get money for small businesses. And it was just, they don't even want to talk to you. I mean, they have someone that's in charge of that program and he'll basically tell you, well, it's there, but we can't spend it. So, but if you're a large business that's, coming from another country or another state, to open up a large business, then, there's all kinds of money for that. But, small businesses, we don't support our small businesses. I mean, I can go on record saying that, broadband, that's, the federal government's got gave West Virginia $1.2 billion, which really sounds good until you go to a meeting. I think, Robbie, you've probably been involved in those meetings, what you got to do to get that $1.2 billion. Whoever the provider has to put up 25% on the money on the project, which doesn't sound that bad to start out with, but we're talking rural broadband where some of these places that these providers are going into might only have 10 customers, and you can't put $2 million of matching fund into a project to go pick up 10, 20 customers. So that's one of the problems. And there's a union clause in there where having to use union workers, which I'm not saying I'm anti-union, but we've only got one company in the whole state that qualifies under that, and that's Frontier. So basically, the federal bill money was put in there to help the larger providers. And with roads, our road problems, not money problems, because we put so much money in the roads. It's a territorial problem for one thing. Your bigger areas are getting more attention than your smaller areas, and we just can't hire people. I mean, Preston County, last I checked, we was 21 people understaffed, and you just can't hire people. I mean, people don't want to. I mean, it's like that in every industry, every business. People, you just can't find people to work. No, in our area, a lot of it has to do because they can go to work in the coal industry because, coal is booming because of the export market and gas. You can go drive a truck in the gas industry for $25, $30 an hour, or you can go to State Road and drive one for $11, $12 an hour. It just, that's a lot of the problems with roads. The money's there. And, we're in District 4. In District 4, I think it's getting better. They've made some changes in leadership, and they're more receptive. I will say that. And they've been up in Preston County several times with, I know they was with Samantha Stone one time, and they was with me twice in the last year to come up and look at different program or problems going on in the county. So at least they're, like I said, they're looking at the problems, and but a lot of it is, I have a problem down in Brewston, where they need to obtain right of ways, and the property owner won't give them or an easement for drainage and won't give them the easement. Now they have to go to court and get it. And so there's sometimes it's with that, and some of the problems dealing with the railroad, which is impossible to deal with on road issues. And fire and EMS, there was a lot of fire and EMS bills came out this year. Several of them passed them. I was looking over the list. A lot of them pertains to training and help with training. The money that we appropriated last year, that was a one time. I think it ended up coming out. It's funded every year now. What was that? 15 million?
No, for the fire department.
I'll just let you talk about that way, but I do know that we're gonna take the money out of the lottery to fund that. So, and But, you know, like I said, it was kind of a slow session. The one big thing that came out that, a lot of people, Preston County or West Virginia, because we have such an aging workforce, is the, doing away totally with the, income tax on social security tax. So that was probably the biggest bill to come out. You know, like I said, there was a lot of them, 279, and I got a list of them. And we can go over them, you know, when we go over questions or whatever. But, you know, we'll see what spatial station brings. You know, one of the big problems or concerns is the IDD waiver program for the disabled people. And, you know, these guys might have a different opinion on it, but I feel that problem was orchestrated by the governor, because as soon as we got Alsatians, first thing he's going to do is, oh man, we got a strategy here, and he was involved in the budget process, and he's going to call spatial station to fix that problem for everybody. So he's notorious about causing problems so he can come in and fix the problems. He does it all the time to us. I mean, we might bicker and argue over issues just like me and my wife do. But he's notorious about creating the problem so he can come in and be the one that solves the problem. And the IDD waiver, no doubt in my mind, that was orchestrated just for so he can come in and
He'd come in like Superman.
Superman, sort of like he did the teacher strike, and we could go on and on with things that we've had more spatial stations with this governor than we ever did any of the other governors, I believe. I mean, as far as I've been, since I've been there, but seems like we're always going back in the spatial station for to allocate money for this, allocate money for that, whatever. And of course, I feel he's running since he's running from US Senate, he's basically using taxpayer money to campaign on, because I'm just being frank with, being upfront and honest. I'm a pretty straight shooter, but I've been there long enough that I can detect BS, and I'm good enough at it with myself to know what BS is. But that being said, that's sort of my take on the session. I'm glad to answer any questions. We doing questions now or wait till the end? And
Let's wait till the end.
All right, thank you, Randy. You want to go ahead, Jay?
Sure. Just to echo what Randy was saying, heck, the way the news was there, you would think the vaccine bill was the one that, took all, I mean, that was what was in the news there for the longest time. And, they didn't talk about the, Social Security tax getting eliminated, the unemployment reform there, which, that seemed to be really important with getting the fund stabilized there. And then, pay raises did happen there with the state employees. So that was, those three were, I thought were kind of like the big ones from the session. I did get a truancy reform bill through. Really hopeful that helps a little bit with some, a number of the schools that are having issues there. I know when I was at the board office, our truancy director there in my county was absolutely thrilled. So fingers crossed that one really, really helps. I knew there was a behavior bill with the kind of the elementary age kids that one was going, started out in the Senate, went to the House, passed there, and then last day, that was one of the ones that died on the last day. I think that'll be one of the ones that kind of gets brought back up on the special session. I think it was mostly just technical stuff that, they were bouncing back and forth
One that they
there.
were using each side to
Oh, well, is that a leverage one?
leverage.
And that's the thing, on the last day, it's, some of those ones that go back and forth that, that they kind of use and, they tell you, oh, here's this technical change that they, when they're actually just, trying to leverage to get this, but, that one, it's a real shame that one died on but so hopefully, and with the special session, look for that in May after the primaries and, stuff, and that'll,
Mhm.
I having it in April, that doesn't make any sense to, because you're gonna get that, just like Randy was saying, you're gonna get all that jargon with the company, especially with that being so close to the May primary. So I look for that in the May interims, which are after the primaries. That'd be a lot better. There was also this year, last year we had passed the kind of the drug reform bill that kind of helped control that Delta 8, Delta 10 and Kratom there.
Mhm.
The vape shops are really bad with right now, but they weren't enforcing it. So that, was very disturbing. We got together with the ag and they were giving us some of the issues that they saw with that, the enforcement troubles. So we did get that passed too. So hopefully we'll see some enforcement going there. I know that's a real big problem with some of our school kids getting a hold of some of that vape stuff that's just, really causing a lot of, we've had expulsion hearings in my county with where they're getting a hold of some of that. So I'm really hopeful there that once we get that going, that'll help with that. So, those three, once we finally get that behavior bill going in a special session, I'm really hopeful that those three will really, really help some of the issues going on in our school systems right now. So, but yeah, once a few little odds and ends that are going to come up there in a special session. And I see that for May. I heard one person say, can't remember which, but that, there's no leverage since he already signed the budget. So we won't do that in April. So, but I guess that's about all I got to, Randy covered good job. So, yes.
It didn't ring, no, it kind
Oh.
of, somebody's calling me.
And that fellow house member there.
Yeah, and maybe he wants me to tune him in. As far as I'm concerned, in a small business, we work year after year, we try to cut regulations. That's the biggest help to small business there can be, is to cut the regulations. They try to say that, oh, it's so easy. I know Mac is really proud of the Secretary of State, how easy it is to get a business started. Try to get a business started. It's pretty complicated, and we're wanting our young people to start new businesses. We've got to make it so that they don't get freaked out whenever they first try. And that's what we work year after year to do. We have a lot of people there that have special interests, and they want to curb that. They come up with reason after reason. Well, if you let that happen, then we're going to happen. So it's not a real simple thing to work through. A lot of their points is good. But every year we do work on that. The childcare thing, I thought was going to make it through. And, but it didn't, mainly because of this $388 million that they didn't realize if they'd spent properly from the COVID money. And so all of a sudden, they paid off all the SBA loans. I believe every school that had an SBA loan, gone. So they did that, but that took away from our money on other things. You see what I mean? Otherwise, if they hadn't have done that, we'd have had to pay that much money back to the government. So things kind of happened there all of a sudden, and it kind of changed what we thought we were going to be able to get through. Seems like every year, right at the end moment, something happens, something blows up, and we got to change where we're going to. Workforce, the deal with the unemployment, it's very complicated. At the rate before COVID, we was set at I think it was $425 was the max that you could draw per week, 424. But after COVID, they put money into that, which brought our amount in the that they have in holding over 200 million. So when they do that, then they have to change the percent that they pay, and they couldn't hold it flat no more. So now then, the max pay is I think it was $662 a week. And next year, it would have been up in the 700s. So you can see, so we had to stop it because it would have been insolvent once again in 3 years. So we had to cap it. Initially, we was gonna cap it at $550, and at $9,000 is what the employer had to pay up to that point. But they decided that there was so much pushback that we capped it at 600 and was it 662 or 670? I can't remember. It's around there. I can't remember the actual number, and $10,000 for the employer. So one of the reasons we wanted to do that was stabilization of our unemployment, because if we have people looking in here to invest in putting a company in West Virginia, that's one of the things they look at. And if they see that our unemployment is just wild, it can go up forever, then they're not gonna come here, because what if they have to have a layoff for a certain period of time, and that changes the percent of that they have to pay into unemployment. Right now, it's fixed, so whenever they look at coming in, bang, they know exactly what they're gonna have to pay. And that's a real good thing, because it's like a security for them. They can bank on that and know what they're doing.
Predictability.
The drug epidemic, here again, it's just West Virginia wins that every year. I think we lost almost 1,500 people in overdoses last year. And we've tried everything in the world. My biggest belief is education. That's the reason why I pushed on this K-3, making children have to know how to read. And to me, to beat this now, we have to start at the very beginning and let those kids, as they grow up, know that they don't want anything to do with drugs. Trying to rehabilitate afterwards. We're doing really good things there, but you know, it's what you call it, they go back into it too often. One of the bright spots is we have a doctor at WVU, a neurosurgeon, that has came up with a way of treating. It's even FDA approved for Parkinson's disease. And what they do, they take a Doppler and they can focus. They know what part of the brain to focus this Doppler. It's not invasive. They don't have to cut open the skull or anything. They can focus it, and they can watch someone, you know, with Parkinson's, and they just quit, and it fixes them. But this also is in preliminary, where they can use this for a drug addict where he wants to, where it takes away the craving. And they know what part of the brain to hit, and they can focus. Now, it takes a lot more research, but some of the people that I seen in the interview was a heavy user of heroin, you know, and after he went through this treatment, he said, I could help my buddy shoot up, but I was not interested. And that's where we want to be. And so we do have some very, very exciting things happening at WVU as far as this neuro treatments. It's for, they're working on several different things, dementia, which is very big to me. They can go in and they see what part of the brain that they need to focus on. And early stages of dementia, they're working on that to where they can stop it. So that's very, very exciting. The only trouble is we were to give this guy $2 million so that he could secure millions off the federal government for research. And the one bill that the governor vetoed was that bill. So I don't understand that. I don't know why he did that. He said that it wasn't wrote properly. it was about as simple as you get. We give you $2 million because we want, I tell you how important this is. People, DeSantis wanted his people to learn to find a cure for dementia. They come to WBU. And it floored me when he said that he vetoed that. So, well, I'm sure that's going to come up because there's some people that's very hot about that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in special session that'll come up. I hope so. Our broadband, Randy knows more about that, and George, but I'm not very involved with the discussions of that. I know we're spending millions of dollars on it. And hopefully we get it out. It's very important, especially for our kids. The one thing though that we are learning that this stuff of teaching kids on computers isn't working very well. So that hopefully that's gonna slow down where it seems like we're a few years behind other states, And so I'm hoping that this catches on. No, they've got to be in the classroom. No, they gotta have a teacher. Roads. West Virginia is just a hard place to build roads, a hard place to keep roads up. Our sub bases, in West Virginia, you have water, and that's what tears all of our roads up. And it comes out and you can't hardly stop it. And all you can do is go back and try to drain it and then work over it. But it's an endless job. And our people that's in charge seem to be doing a way better job than what they used to. And we've been spending a lot of money on it because here again, that's another thing that people look at if they look at West Virginia to bring their company here. We have a lot of good things going on. Now, fire and EMS, last summer, we passed a bill where we give the fire departments $12 million. And that was out of a line item out of his budget. But so what they did, they decided that was not a for sure thing. Because anytime there's a line item, the governor has to put that in every year. He has to write that in there. I thought he'd be nuts if he would physically take that out of the budget because it would come up. The governor cut all the fire departments, and I figured, well, he'd never do that. But they decided that it would be better to put this $12 million on the levy lottery. It's not excess lottery, it's on the lottery fund. But see, there's there's several different things in there, and so fire is one of the last. They said it has never not been funded to be able to fund the fire department. So it's they thought it was more sure thing, $12 million more per year. How that's broke down, $6 million goes out to the fire departments the same way as the state money. It's 0.55 comes through the fire departments every year, has for several years now. And so 6 million would be divided up between 427 fire departments, volunteer and part paid and part volunteer fire departments. If you're totally paid, you don't get any of that money. Also, other things come to it. It's they get a percent of the fireworks, taxes, and that kind of stuff goes to the fire departments. But then there's another two different breakdowns of $3 million each. One of those, they divide all the people in West Virginia into $3 million. And then your county, however many people you have in your county, you get that much of that $3 million. Then the other $3 million is broke up into counties that have a fire fee. I think there was 33 counties that had a fire fee. So of those 33 counties, they add up that population and that's divided out. And that's how much those $2-3 million pots goes to the county commissions. They are allowed to distribute it to their fire departments however they see fit, the county commissions are. But they are not allowed to give that to EMS, any of that money. I know they said, well, there's provisions in there for EMS. If the EMS is a part of the fire department, yes. But if it's outside of that, no. Now, the governor did give another $10 million towards, and I'd never seen whether this was salary enhancement. They did that last year. And what that was, if you were a paid EMS department, you could turn in how many hours, how many runs and stuff, and they have a formula they fill out. And that will go to individuals. I think in your county, there was one, John was telling me, your dad was telling me, that got $7,000, you know, and what that's for is for retention. Letting them know that we need to pay you more because it's such a vital job. Now, some of the things that I tried to get through this year was, one was a pathway to a medical career. What that is, well, if you're an EMT for 3 years, we'll pay for you to go to be a paramedic. And we'll pay all expenses for you to go to there. If there's funding in our EMS fee, which there will be, unless 400 people decide to do it, and we won't have enough money to do it. And what I'm going to try to this year, I want to add to that RN. If you're a paramedic and run in the field for 10 years, then we're going to pay for you to go to school to be an RN. I know that WVU's got a program there that this would fit right into. And they said that they would like to work with us to get that. And that way, what I'm trying to do is build a career. EMS is for young people. I don't know how many of you people have ran on the back of those trucks, but you got to lift, you got to, you know, it's not nice weather sometimes. And it's not for old coots like me or even young coots that's only in their 50s and 60s that you start thinking about this. I'm getting too old for this. So what I was wanting to do is getting these young people either right out of high school or college so that they start in it and then they can see, well, I've got a pathway to a real career here where I can work in for the rest of my life. And the other thing I'm working on with the fire departments is a retirement plan. And what I want to do there is if you make so many % of runs, or if do your training, in 5 years, you'll be eligible when you retire to get a retirement. It'll be a very small check, but if you're there 10 years, it'll be more. If you're there 15 years, it'll be more. What I'm trying to do is establish a recruitment and then a retention. Once you've been there 10 years and you think, man, if I stay another 5 years, when I retire, I can have maybe $800 or $900 a month coming to me, you know, so I'm going to stay in another 5 years. And that's the kind of things we're looking for. We're also looking at PTSD. I know EMS we're working on that. We're like after you go on a bad run, I don't know. There's different runs that affect you differently, usually children, dismemberment of kids, you know, or death of a child, just plain bodily messed up. That sticks with some people. And they need, I've seen where we've lost EMTs over these kind of runs. And so the EMS, they are working on having a team that will come in and work with these people. The faster, the better it is. And they're working on it. So we got some good things going. I think our state EMS is finally getting straightened up. We passed a bill this year where you have to renew your certificate every 2 years, but the reason is that makes us fall in line with National Registry. And all you have to do is take your classes and then you're renewed every year. instead of making it, well, you can be either state certified or national certified. We wanted everybody to just be the same, make it real simple. And so we did pass that this year. And I think that's about long enough for me.
Okay, I want to use some ballpark numbers here. There's about 2,600 bills this year that were not passed, but you know, that some delegate or some senator introduced. You know, so that's, just think about how many bills that is, how much material there is to read and all the committees trying to go through 2,600 bills. That ended up, you know, once it went through the process, we ended up with approximately 279 going through what they call completed legislative action. Now, it doesn't mean they became law. That means they made it through the legislature. And then we had the governor, last I heard, he vetoed 8 bills and he allowed 2 to become law without signing them, which is, I mean, that's the same as if he signed them, they still become law. And those were, interestingly enough, those 2 bills that he let become law but wouldn't sign was raw milk bill and unemployment. And to me, I didn't think either one of those was really controversial. The unemployment, Buck explained it. It didn't make any cuts. It just, it stabilized it where it's at because it was on a trajectory to start losing money. And so we had to do something or else us, the state taxpayers, would end up having to backfill it. So it just kept it where it's at. So that's not controversial to me. But anyway, so those 2 became law without signing. One of the 8 that he vetoed, and again, a couple of these guys mentioned it, was this $2 million for research for WVU, for kind of like ultrasonic something to affect the brain waves and all that. Dr. Razai, I think is the guy's name, who's like the head research doctor in charge of this. This is a big deal. This research it's being looked at by people around the world. I think it was on 60 Minutes or somewhere. I mean, this has been on national and international news. And they were only asking for 2 million out of our approximately $5 billion budget. And that's our regular budget. Plus, we're estimated to have this year about $750 million so-called surplus. So we're dealing with almost $6 billion here. And I think that was really, I don't understand why he vetoed it. I heard the reasons, but I think the reasons were nonsense in my opinion. Anyway, so I think we're going to, the legislature, I think, is going to try to figure out a way to get that back on track.
To override it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
We're not in session. You can.
Yeah, I know you can't. You're not.
It'll come back, it's come back. He said it needs to.
Okay.
some form where we'll try to work something. Maybe you know more about it than.
Special session will be his idea then.
Yeah.
Well,
It's gonna be his bill and-
I'm trying not to get into that.
Oh, sorry.
but No,
Well, that's what he said, and he's a message. We're not.
Yeah,
it's
I
the same
know.
we're
It's- sometimes it's about whose idea it is and people want credit for things. But anyway, so that was one that kind of annoyed me. Social Security tax, and a lot of these things I'm gonna say, these guys have already mentioned. That's the good part about going last. So, yeah, so we cut the final cut. So Social Security tax, state income tax on Social Security in West Virginia is already supposed to be eliminated under 50 and under 100 single and married. So this will be a 3-year phase out on this last portion that's left. So that is a total of about $37 million. So I just throw that number out there because, you know, these things aren't simple. It's not just like, sure, let's get rid of the tax. Well, you got to look at, okay, how much money is it going to cost? Where's it coming out of the budget? you know, what's going to backfill that gap out of the budget, you know, and 37 million, yeah, out of 5 or 6 billion might not sound like a lot, but it's still 37 million. But we passed that, so it's a 3-year phase out of your state income tax on that, Social Security. The pay raise, a lot of people call it a teacher pay raise, it's all state employees, right? I just making
it's
this
all state.
clarification because a lot of people just keep saying teacher pay raise, which it is, but it's also the other state employees as well. And that's approximately 5% overall. State employees, you know, which was 150, 180, I forget how many million that was. Do you remember? Anyway, it's a lot. We're talking well over $100 million for that. So another thing, as far as things that didn't make it through in the budget, we have needed for a decade, a new state agriculture lab for it's kind of administered by the Department of Agriculture, but they do work for everyone for the whole state. I mean, you know, they test, you know, dog food coming into the state to the meat and eggs and things coming from the poultry houses in the Eastern Panhandle. It's not just dealing with farmers and agriculture. It's dealing with our food safety and security in the state. And it's a big benefit to the university students in the state. They can go there and work and do internships and different things and get training there for, you know, for their classes and for their career and something good to put on a resume. The lab we have now is dilapidated. I mean, it's in bad shape. And we've needed a new one for a long time. Every year we talk about it, some reason every year, the money never gets there. So I'm hoping, and it didn't make it in this year, I'm hoping next year, maybe finally, we will be able to get a new ag lab built. Now, I don't have too much more. A couple of the issues I want to touch on here, the child care. And there were a couple different ideas, a couple different bills relating to this that were floating around there. And maybe some of these guys might know a little more about it than I do. I'm not on any committee that dealt directly with this bill. But I did, you know, I know it's important. I got emails and phone calls about it. I've talked to people here in the county about it. One of the ideas was a tax break on, okay, if you're paying for childcare, you can get like a tax credit or tax break on that to come off of your state income tax, for example. But then you get into the details of, okay, how do we verify it? Is it just enrollment? And then groups have come out and said, no, enrollment won't work because you'll get people that'll enroll and then they drop out, or they enroll, but they're not taking their kids every day. And then they don't end up paying the amount to the daycares, and they can't keep a schedule. And, you know, I'm not in the daycare business. I don't know the details, but there's a lot more to it than, you know, the devil's in the details with this. And what's the price tag? I heard numbers all over the place. Maybe you guys have a number. I don't know a number off the top of my head, but I mean, I heard numbers anywhere from, you know, in the tens of millions up over 100 million. I don't know. And when you're trying to do the budget, and the looming thing over all this, and I know Randy, I think, mentioned it, is this possible fallback of 400 million, 460 million, however much it is, 380 something. Okay. So we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars of money that the federal government is investigating right now with the state through the governor's office, I believe, saying, hey, this may have been spent incorrectly. The state may have to pay the federal government back all these hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, that threw a wrench in things when we're trying to do a budget, and you've got a piano of $300 or $400 million hanging over your head. And it's like, well, okay. So that, I think, added some hesitancy to do too much. You know, like I listed other things we did, the state pay raise, the social security tax cuts. So we did things that spent hundreds of millions of dollars out of the budget. You can't do everything in 1 year. You know, it's going to be a phased process. Hopefully after this money with the federal government gets straightened out, whether we have to pay back or not. Once that gets straightened out, we have a little more certainty of what the budget needs to be. And maybe next year we can get, and that's going to be a heavy lift. So anyone who's a strong supporter of that, you need to be on it. You need to be lobbying for it. You need to be calling people. I mean, besides just the four of us, it needs people at the state level, the governor's office. They need to hear about this. Workforce, we're trying more workforce development, a lot of the schools. I even hear Mark from WVU talking about trying to do a lot more technical type training. You know, because they're realizing that not everyone wants the traditional or needs maybe the traditional 4-year bachelor's degree in whatever. We need technical training for people. So I think they're trying to partner with some other schools and trying to partner with ideas and do kind of some things that are a little less conventional than in the past. The drug epidemic, back to the 2 million in research that WVU should have gotten. Randy knows a lot more about the broadband issue than I do. I would ask him about that. Roads, employees, lack of good employees for our state road workers. That's the biggest complaint that I hear when I go and talk to the state road supervisors. They say, look, we need employees. Like Randy mentioned, there's shortages. You could probably go to every single county, talk to the supervisor in that county, and they're going to tell you they don't look, you know, we're down this many people, we're authorized this many, we only have this many, we can't get people to pass a drug test, whatever. We give somebody their CDLs and then they quit and go somewhere else and make more money driving, you know, truck for some other company. And so, you know, they're included in that group that we just gave another 5% pay raise. And I think that's what the fourth pay raise and fourth one in a row.
I think it's 5
Four or five in a row. Every year we've been giving what we can. You know, again, we have to keep a budget. And this, not to get sidetracked, but this surplus that we hear about every year, it's not really as clear as what you might think it is. It's not just totally free extra money hanging out there. A lot of that money is already there's already people that have plans for that money. And it's not as simple as to say, okay, we got an extra 700 million. We ought to be able to do all these things, right? I wish. I'd love that, but it's not that simple. Fire and EMS, Buck explained that a lot better than I can. He knows a lot more about it. He's worked on this a lot. But yeah, we got 12 million out of the, I'll call it regular lottery. They just call it lottery, and then there's excess and there's different categories. But I think that that's going to be a fairly stable source. Some people hear lottery money and they think, oh, well, you know, what's that? Or what if the lottery's don't make as much money? Well, they ran the numbers, and for the last, 20 years or whatever, it has made more than enough to cover this 12 million. And a lot of other stuff, a lot of that money goes to senior citizen groups and education, and that money goes to all sorts of things. We're talking about a pool of roughly $400 million out of lottery. So far, this 12 million is supposed to be safe. Anyway, hope I didn't ramble on too long. I'm glad to take a question.
Actually, you're the shortest one of them.
Okay.
I have a question. If you don't mind.
Yeah.
I didn't know what you were gonna
Give me
do.
1 second.
Okay.
Just want to thank you guys. We got 4 elected officials and they kept their summaries within an hour. So that's awesome news. We do have some time for some questions. So if you want to go ahead,
I have
Don.
one question, and it harkens back to, you guys all touched on a little bit with the pay raises for the state employees. And help me with my ignorance. A teacher, what freaking employee are they? Are they a state employee or are they a county employee? Because if they're working for a county, because I see the tags that say county on them, okay? Well, then if that's the case, that takes that out of your guys' pool because now if you're having a teacher shortage in Jefferson County, they can of themselves vote to give them pay raises that are higher than anywhere else in the state to keep those teachers. You know what I'm saying? Wouldn't that be the solution?
Yeah, but if they were state employees, they couldn't be in the legislature.
And there again, there's my point. If, or what are they? Which are they? Are they state? Because if they're state employees, how is it, if they're not state employees, why is the state giving them pay raises? Ah,
We
But if
don't
they're
give
county
them pay
employees,
raises.
then it should be county.
We allot the money to this state school board that gives it to them. So it goes into their what do you call that?
State aid formula.
Yeah, state aid formula is how it goes in. And that's how.
that's a shell game to me. Honest to God, it is, because the state is still paying their salary. Therefore, they should be a state employee. If not,
This has been argued.
Yes,
that is
this
my
isn't the
point.
first time I've heard this argument, but
and I have, no one can ever give me a straight answer. It is a shell game.
well,
Somewhere or another, someone needs to clarify what they are, because like I said, that would solve a huge problem for like the panhandle counties when they could say, we really don't care what Fayette County's doing to pay their teachers. We're gonna pay them an extra $10,000 because they're county employees. And that would take that away from you all at the state level. Because you could, then you wouldn't have that argument where they said, well, locality pay, they always argue against locality pay.
Those in the Eastern Panhandle, the counties do pay those teachers more than here. And it's a real complicated thing. We've argued this before. Main reason why I want to argue is because I want to get teachers out of the legislature. But
That's my point. They shouldn't be there. To me, that is, if that's the case, then, okay, if I'm a county employee, well, then I should be able to be a commissioner and a senator or a delegate. What's the difference?
I don't know what the difference is, but I can tell you that.
But to that's the conflict of interest, and I understand that.
It just will not move.
I asked about that,
Yeah.
last year which was my first year in the legislature. I asked about that exact question, like, wait a minute, are they county? Are they state?
Mhm.
Because there are several, I don't know, probably a half a dozen or more
Yeah,
teachers who serve as delegates and senators.
Yeah.
And I asked, because state employees are not allowed to
Right.
serve in the legislature.
Yeah.
Any state employee, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. State road worker can't do it.
no, yeah.
So I asked that same question and I was given some convoluted answer and basically told, don't stir up the pot. It's too complicated.
And there again, there's my point. If they're not, then why is it so big a deal that a mayor of a town can't be a delegate? Or a county commissioner can't be a senator? You know what I mean? They're county employees or city employees.
Do you want a political answer or do you want my personal, I mean,
Randy, you're always a straight shooter, man. We want.
Hey, I want your honest answer,
Here's the-
Randy. I honestly.
okay, honestly. Okay, the state constitution says we have to fund public education.
That I understand.
Under the state.
That I understand.
Okay, we're the ones that has to, fund everything for public education. So with that being said, they are state employees,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But you've got what they call, we have two teachers unions in the states
Mm-hmm.
that got this carved out to make them county employees
Mm-hmm.
instead of state employees. So they can serve on the legislature.
So that way they
So
can
they-
stack the deck
Well, they-
in their favor.
Help control the education system. I mean, as a state, we have almost zero oversight over education.
Mhm.
That's
I know
why
that.
amendment, what was it, 4?
Mm-hmm.
We tried to get amendment 4 to put them under the legislature. The State Department of
Yeah.
Education or Board of Education.
Mhm.
And of course, it failed, so we still don't have any oversight. Every other agency in the state has to submit rules. They do, we pass a bill,
Mhm.
they're required to pass the rules for it. It comes before the legislature. We look at it and say, oh no, because a lot of times they try to switch the rules that
Mhm.
just takes away the whole intent of the bill. But as a legislature, we're able to change that, not approve the rules or whatever. Every agency in the state of West Virginia has to do that, except the State Board of Education. Now, they submit rules to us so we can look at them.
But you can't do,
And we
say yay or
We
nay.
can't say yay or nay. We just have to, basically what they're doing is telling us what they're going to do. So we can pass a bill to change something. They can send a set of rules that does the exact opposite, just basically guts what our intention of the bill was, and there's not a thing we can do about it. So, but with that being said, the main thing is it's a way for the, and not all teachers are in the teachers union, and I'm not anti.
No. That's not my point. It's just, I
That's
see
how,
that
that's what
conflict.
I'm going.
Yeah.
It needs to go in front of the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court needs to rule whether they're county employees or state employees, one or the other.
Exactly, because my point is, but if a county, because this has happened in several cases, county commissioners, I knew several county commissioners who ran for Senate or ran for
And they,
delegate and they won. Well, they had to immediately resign because it was considered a conflict, but they're a county employee. How would it be any
if you're
different?
any kind of state employee, you cannot run for
State
state office. I mean.
Then there again, there's my point. If it's
Unless
for,
you're
if it's
educated,
a commissioner
not just a teacher.
or a mayor,
Educated.
why isn't it the same for a teacher? Sorry.
But that's the gist of it.
All right, I actually got a question. I think it's the last one up at the end. You guys were talking about how it was like such a big burden on some of these businesses that own a lot of equipment, like there was like an equipment tax that you pay.
Yeah.
Business inventory tax, and I think that also like had something to do with like personal property taxes on vehicles or
Mhm.
something. I'm not sure if they're separate. Did that go anywhere or?
That was one of those amendments that got killed.
That was amendment two.
That was amendment
So
two.
the vehicle-
I'm not up to date with
Well,
what
the
happened.
vehicle tax, I'm sure you've heard people talking about that. So that, we went back and made it to where you still have to pay it to the county like you always do, always
Mhm.
did. And then you can use it the following year and you get that rebated or refunded.
Yeah, when you file your state income tax.
Credit off of
Yeah.
your state income tax. That's for your vehicles, your private, personal property tax on your vehicles. The business inventory tax, we didn't do it with that. That's gonna have to be.
50%, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was relief.
It's really 50%. You can get 50% of your business. in
On
inventory.
business
Did
inventory.
they- 50, that part passed too?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 100% of personal property tax and.
I know the personal property tax part.
That's what I thought passed as well.
50%.
I thought at the last minute something happened with that and it didn't.
See, that's what happens. We don't know if it passes.
Small business,
yeah.
You don't know what happened.
Under 2 million or 1 million?
Yeah, there's a threshold of money, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we
what
had
I was looking at.
here you would know.
Threshold
It's a
stop.
small business. I
Up
think.
to $1 million, isn't it?
Exactly. Was it?
Yes, it's up to $1 million and that's when it stops.
That's right. If you're, yeah, okay.
A little
Now-
small business, a little mom and pop
If you're
store
below-
might be able to get below
yeah,
it.
there was it wasn't for everyone. It was a threshold of financial
Right,
threshold.
below 1 billion, you get so much off. Okay, that does sound familiar.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's only
I'd forgotten
five
about that.
states, there's only 5 states that has that, the personal property or business inventory tax.
Yeah.
And one of the problems we have with this is this only affects the businesses in our state.
Mhm.
If we bring in new businesses, the first thing they do is they give them a credit for
Mhm.
that, so they'll come in here.
Mhm.
That's not fair to our,
That doesn't help the existing business. That was my argument for getting rid of this because it is a burden.
They still have to pay the
Oh, yeah.
business.
Yeah.
we agree with
inventory
it.
tax.
But remember, when you get rid of something like this,
You still have.
somebody's gotta pay.
I know that, but that's the thing. You have to figure, okay, if this pot of money dries up, how do I fill it back up again?
It's like
What do I use to fill it?
blue collar workers pay more taxes.
Kathy, oh, sorry,
But
sorry. I
I
mean,
have a couple questions. One is PEIA. Non-state agencies are a big pool of PEIA as well as state workers.
and they've seen a significant increase. And I know the state has been able to give their employees 5% over, I think, Mr. Street said 4 years. Their increase wasn't quite as hefty as they are on the municipalities and the counties that are paying that. I just wondered if you all had any idea of how that's trending for upcoming years on PEIA. And the second one is, I'd just like to have some information on the Neuro Institute, who we need to lobby to get that on the special session, because that's significant. That research is really important. So those are just my two.
That was already made up by an individual, already allotted, I believe, that $2 million to that, so he wouldn't lose. But it's pretty pathetic that our state didn't care.
Mhm.
But I think they've already got that money.
But there was other things in that as well. There was another component to that bill that was also
There was
really-
3 million for WVU, and then there were 4 million for, was it CAMC or something? There
There were
other-
two components to that bill, and both of them went when he vetoed it. So my question
That's what I'm
is,
talking about, the other 4 million.
yeah, to bring that back, because I think both of those things were significant. So if you'd have any suggestions for us of who we might email
The
or
governor's office.
governor's office, okay, that's.
Well,
We're going to originate now on a special session.
Mhm.
We can't bring up
Okay, so
anything.
he sets the entire
Yeah.
agenda for that, okay. But my second question is just your perspective on how you see PEIA and that moving forward for specifically non-state agencies, because they do make up, and if they all withdrew, you would see a big impact to that group.
Well, and to add to that, over the last couple years, with this increase specifically, we have seen, I think, up to like 27%
More than that, 33%
increase
about that.
for our employees, what is coming.
So
So we can give 3, or we could have given 5, or we can increase, salaries to try to retain people. But when those hikes go even further, then their checks, even with an increase, are way less than they were when they started, and
And that
we just can't get our head above
That
water.
impacts your state workers as well, when you're taking that large of a chunk out of their, for healthcare. And also remember this, retirement in the state of West Virginia is mandatory. A county employee does not, if, they must participate in the retirement system. So it's not an option. So you put that percentage on top of the escalating costs of this very large group. I just needed your input of how you thought that would move forward.
Well, remember, some of the hospitals were going to stop taking PEIA.
Mhm.
That's how low they pay.
I
And
thought
so
that-
now then they've raised it up to where the hospitals will say, okay, we're good here. But with that, they didn't want to go broke. Remember, they broke up the DHHR into 3 groups. And they are working very hard on trying to see what they were doing. They were taking the money and they were that they were allocated for this and they were using it for this over here. We're hoping that when we break this all up and they get it broke down, that it'll be more streamlined and we'll get a better take on what we're spending for this. States, you do very poor, accounting like a business would. Well, the states don't, they always look at, well, we got more money coming in and we'll just spend it over here.
one thing about, you mentioned this large increase that happened whenever last year, or whenever it
Yeah.
Well,
was.
last year and this year.
This year
as
it's
well.
coming again.
Right.
More than last.
A lot of that started, or how it happened was the 80-20 formula wasn't properly maintained over the years. It was, I don't know, going back 5 or 6 years ago now. They supplemented it and kept it below where it was. So the 80-20 got out of whack. We ended up with more like
Mhm.
70-30 or something,
Mhm.
whatever the percentages were. And so my understanding of it is that we're having these large increases now. I mean, number one, healthcare has gone up for everybody, private and public,
Mhm.
but we're having these large increases now because we're trying to reset the ratio back to the 80-20, and once we get it stabilized at that, then increases from there on out should be smaller and more incremental and be more steady and not having all of a sudden.
So you see that as the future.
That's the way it's explained to me, and it makes sense, and that's my understanding of it.
And it makes sense, but what is happening is there is being, some of it's not being pushed down the pike on the state employees. They're piggybacking off of counties, making counties pay the brunt of the load, and we have less money to work with than anybody.
In the state, it's based on your income. When you're a non-state agency, whether you make 20,000 or 50,000, your premium's the same. So you put that on top of mandatory retirement. And what I'm saying is your $14 an hour job on the state level, your impact from your healthcare is not as significant as that $14 an hour if you're working for the county. Now, I understand that private healthcare is also very expensive. I think when you're coming for your municipalities and your counties, my question is just because of budgeting and everything else, are you anticipating to see those type of increase continuing, or are you anticipating a leveling?
Remember, counties are assessed differently than state. That yours is counted up. This is what your bill is for PEIA, period. Now you break it up however you want to, but this is your bill. Isn't that how it works?
Counties have flexibility of what they want, how they want to divide the share.
Yes.
That's correct. But to the best of my knowledge, and the commissioners can help me with this, but the rate is the rate is the rate.
The rate is
If
the
you
rate is
want
rate,
Plan
no matter
A-
whatever your employee is, if you want plan, like she's saying, if you want plan A, no matter what you make, this one's gonna cost you. If you want
That's
plan
not-
B,
But see,
it's gonna cost you.
the PEIA gives the county, this is how many employees, this is your bill. You break it up however you want to, but this is your bill. And I think if you wanted to do that, you could, lower to higher, you could.
I don't think there's anything in the
I don't-
premiums that allow us to say, as it does for the state.
No, I don't
that
think
If you
so.
make $20,000 and you want Plan A,
Yeah.
this is what it
Don't
is.
you remember that
I've never seen.
I've never seen that. I've never
That's-
seen that either.
last year? No, you guys
Yeah.
just get a bill,
Yeah.
right, from the PEIA that the
But-
county
But if
commission
you
has to
look at
pay.
if you look at the summary,
But yeah,
and then we'll get off this, but if you look at the summary, if you look at a state employee, it's based on their income.
mhm.
Right.
If you look on a non-state agency,
They count them, and that's it.
no, it's if you want Plan A, regardless of what you make or the county pays, it's this. So what I'm saying, yes, counties have the flexibility to say that the employee's gonna pay 60% and the county's gonna pay 40%.
Or 70 and 30 or whatever.
Or
That's the
80,
flexibility
or
we have.
whatever. But what I'm telling you is, when you're making $14,000 for a county, or a city, or a non-state agency, this is the premium regardless. In the state, it's based on your wages. So in other words, someone can have the same policy.
A state road worker with the policy A pays a hell of a lot less than
Yes.
the professor at WU. For the same
to your
exact
teachers-
coverage.
So to your teachers, so when you're giving them 5%,
I know this conversation was brought up, but I think it was last year, it wasn't this year. I didn't hear it this year. I was up on it last year, but it's something to do with the counties. They give them a set amount to pay, and then it's up to the counties to break it up however they want to. It's something like that. I can't remember.
well, if you would go to your summary, if you would just take some time to look at what PEI provides, it will show you that this is the rate for a state and this is the rate for a non-state agency. And perhaps I'm misguided here, but I think that if you will consider that it's very hard for municipalities and counties to keep up with to try to retain workers because they're struggling just the same as big business and the Department of Highways and everybody else. And so you put mandatory retirement and the requirement of the escalating cost on healthcare, that kind of also creates an additional burden. And so I just, I hope you all will consider that as we move forward with healthcare and also
I'll try to find out and I'll get back with you on that.
if you'll just look into that, that'd be great.
PIA is state insurance.
That's correct.
Okay, and so it was made for state employees.
Mhm.
And then it allows, as a service, allows counties, municipalities to participate.
Mhm.
Right.
And other non-state agencies. That's
So
correct.
this is the way it was explained to me. So it's basically, and just for the records, I honestly think the state needs to be out of the insurance business.
I would agree with you.
If we need to privatize like we did workers' comp, we was $2 billion in debt with workers' comp when we had to do something. We went privatized and now it's one of the best workers' comp plans in the country. I mean, we're one of the best states for workers' comp. And yeah, the legislators about, I wasn't there at the time, none of us was, but they got killed when they privatized that.
I remember that.
But honestly, PIA, my opinion is the government can't run anything, especially insurance.
I would agree with you.
Insurance and things like that, because they use PIA as a political tool. I mean, like I said, I've been doing it for 12 years and almost every election you get attacked because of PIA, because they use that. And that's why they always want to, it depends on, who's in charge, what party's doing what, whatever. I'm not getting into the politics, but it is political. The PIA is a lot of political. And the last two governors that we've had, the Earl Ray Tomlin and Jim Justice, nobody wanted to raise it.
Mhm.
Okay, so they would just freeze it and put 40 million, 80 million, 100 million, whatever they had in there. So nothing changed.
Mhm.
And with that, and it's supposed to be an 80-20 program. So it ended up being like a 90-10 where the state was paying 90 and, the employee was paying 10 or the county, whatever. But everyone here knows that healthcare costs has just
Mhm.
escalated. I mean, it's just, believe me, I know I pay $800 a month just for me. And that's not PIA, that's with my Cobra insurance. But, you talk to any small business, we just had this talk last Sunday at Easter dinner, because my son and son-in-law both own businesses, and talking about how much of a burden, how much their insurance has raised.
Mhm.
And it's because healthcare has raised so much. So it's just not PIA, it's everybody. I mean, it's hitting everybody. But as a state, we had to go in and because what WVU, which is the biggest payer in PIA, because, every professor, every nurse, doctor, anybody's a state employee for WVU. And they was threatening to pull out of PIA unless we fixed it. Well, if they pulled out, because that's where your higher income is, because it's income based with state board. So we had to do something. We had to do something to fix it, or it was just going to crash. That's when this job.
I'm
I understand what you're saying.
I'm just saying that
It's-
when we talk about employees and retention and the ability to keep workers, my comment was just that if you continue this type of escalation, and we don't have tons of options, because when you pull out of a large group like PEIA and you try to stand alone as a county, well, your healthcare is, being part of a group is a real advantage for everyone. There's no question about that.
But
I think the problem, like you touched on it, Randy, none of the other governors want to do it. They didn't want to be the bad guy.
No, they don't want.
So they pushed it down the road and eventually somebody got to be the bad guy. You see that?
Upside down on the 80-20.
Well, you see that with different municipalities when they don't want to, the councils don't want to raise their water bills for decades. And all of a sudden now they finally have to raise it because they're going to go broke. And now they raise it 80% at one time and everybody freaks out. And well, if you raised it 2% each year, like you should have,
That's what I was.
we wouldn't be raising it
Yeah, and that's why
17%
I'm
at a
not
whack.
looking for the fix.
To answer your question, yeah, it's the rate of inflation, the way the rate of inflation's going now,
Mhm.
healthcare.
Oh, God, yeah.
This problem's not going away. It's just.
And if we try to pull out to,
We
to go, to try.
We got nowhere to go.
We go back to PII. we-
Yeah, once a county or municipality pulls out, you cannot go back.
Same counts.
And we have checked on the different insurance and a lot of them are like, you don't even want to ask. I mean, honest to God, that's what they tell you. We can't do
A lot
it.
of options.
Yeah.
As far as health.
Like, we
That's
can't
the
do it.
whole problem. PEIA is way too cheap. And.
Correct.
We have to subsidize it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it still doesn't pay the hospitals that well.
No, it doesn't.
No.
And one of the problems, if you go out of state, they'll pay out of state.
Oh, I know.
They charge, but they won't
Pay
pay.
it to in-state hospital.
I think we got another question. We'll keep things moving a little bit. You have a question?
Yes, I know it's not as personally vested question and a little bit off the topics you all have discussed. Something that has been going on for a long time, but I just recently became aware of. And I'm hoping you could perhaps explain the rationale behind the decision for West Virginia's continued involvement with Qatar, knowing like our National Guard goes there to train. And I don't understand with Qatar's known links to terrorism, why we support our National Guard going there for training.
Well, I've been there many times. It's part of our whole, so NGB, National Guard Bureau, which is Don probably knows a lot about this. He's retired from Camp Dawson Reserves, not Guard, but still.
I still
So
know a bit about it.
NGB is, which every state is a part of, every state's guard cooperates with DOD at large through NGB. And basically, they tell us to go somewhere or offer training, or when they, send you, a guardsman, his unit, a state on a deployment. I don't know of any state who picks and chooses and tells the Department of Defense, no, we don't want to go there because we disagree with that country's stance on human rights. I'm not defending Qatar, trust me. Like I said, I've been there. I know probably what you're talking about, but basically, they're the lesser of the evils in that part of the world. I've been to almost every country in the Middle East, some of them multiple times. They're the lesser of the evils. So the enemy of our enemies, our friend kind of thing. Even if they're not saints, we're working with them because that's the best we've got in the region. And we as a state receive a lot of federal money, billions and billions of dollars of federal money, not just from the Department of Defense, but just overall. And so there are certain things that we cooperate with and every state cooperates with. I just read an article the other day, Camp Dawson's getting another 8 or 10 million, something. It's several millions of dollars to build another physical fitness training complex down there. And, that's federal money we get because we cooperate with them. And, it does help our National Guard to get the experience and the training and whatever. And when they go to these countries that are less than desirable, they're not participating with that country's human rights violations. They just happen to be in that country doing some training, and then they come back home. So I guess I probably know what you mean, but I would say that it's not us as a state sponsoring that state's human rights violations. We're just there as part of a greater cooperation with the federal government, and our guardsmen and women get training out of it. It's the best way I can answer it.
And here's the other thing about that, because I've been to different countries like George has, and they're not the most desirable places to be. But you're doing, when you go there and you train with these other militaries, what you're trying to do is show that country's people that we are good people in the United States. Because we're there building schools and putting in wells and things like that. Yeah, you don't particularly like the leader, but as I guess Truman said one time, yeah, he's a bastard, but he's our bastard. You know, it is what it is.
Anybody else have any questions?
I just.
Oh, sorry,
It
go
was
ahead.
just a comment, and it was pertaining to the business discussion earlier. And, you know, I know I talked to several of you about the salvage value bill, and I know Randy's worked on that a lot of times with the salvage values for windmills and that type of thing. And there was a bill that was up for salvage value for Bitcoin mining. And I was, we're in the, you know, process of entertaining some Bitcoin mining in Preston County. And, you know, it's just, it's mind-boggling to me that you give that kind of a discount to the large businesses, but yet the small businesses suffer. And so, go ahead.
So did that pass?
No, I
I think
think
it
it
did.
think it got stuck in finance. It
Well, and
just- But
that's-
somebody was there supporting
part of
it, and you know, I imagine it will come back again.
Here's what I would say to that. There's 134 of us down there, Senate and House. And like I said, 2,600 bills. There's always going to be somebody that throws something out there that's kooky, and people are going to look at it and think they use it like us generically, like as if we're all supporting it because someone put forth a crazy bill. But like you said, this bill didn't make it. There's a reason. And I mean, I'll tell you, I wouldn't vote for a bill like that. So just because someone throws some crazy bill out there, don't think that we're all supporting that crazy bill, because probably none of the four of us would have. But you're right, and back to the supporting small businesses, anything we can do to help small businesses, like when that amendment where we wanted to get rid of that business inventory tax, we're willing to do it, or I'm willing to do it. I'll let them speak for themselves, but we're willing to do it. But some of it constitutionally, we can or can't, like this. And this salvage value thing has come back to bite us. It's something we've tried to fix. The fix is not simple. We tried to fix it on windmills and different things. It ended up being tied to some coal stuff. Randy, you know more about that. Anyway, I think we agree with you, and we would like to be able to give breaks like that but there's rules on certain businesses, how we can give the breaks and the constitutionality of the money going to the counties. I'm not an expert on it, but there's a reason that bill didn't make it through.
Good, thank you.
I'm not gonna say I'm not an expert on it because I'm probably the biggest expert in the
Well, that's why I
legislature.
referred to you on that.
I'm not an expert on much, but I am really familiar with the salvage tax was started back when the EPA imposed all these mandatory air quality permits or whatever on power plants and outside coal facilities and stuff like that. So this bill had good intentions when it was originally passed, because what it did was put any equipment that power companies or coal companies had to put on their facilities, required by federal law, to put scrubbers in, air quality monitoring, whatever, cover the belt lines on the outside coal mines, but they were required by federal law to do that, to continue to operate. So the state passed a bill where they could be taxed, just the pollution control, could be taxed as salvage value, to keep the consumers from having to pay the bill, because somebody has to pay for all that equipment going on to these power plants. And it was only the pollution control equipment that was required by law to be put on these plants or on these coal facilities. Okay, it's a good idea. If I was there, I would have voted for that because it protects the consumer. It helped, because somebody has to pay for it. So it rolls downhill. So it was a good idea. Okay, and then some years later, then the wind industry came in and lobbied heavily to be included in that. Now, they are not required to, they don't create any pollution. You know what I mean? That's the idea of green energy. It doesn't create pollution. But they lobbied their politicians and was able to get put in on that. Their windmills was put under that salvage value also because they passed the bill to do it. The legislature did. And now you've got, and so then another industry, the wind or solar industry after now, they're trying to get their equipment with just salvage values. And then then there's just, there's a company that produces the silicon or silicone. It's a metal, they burn coal, gravel and wood to come up with this. It makes silicone tubing and stuff for the medical. But anyway, so they got in on that. Just them. So everybody's constantly trying to get in on that now because it's a huge tax reduction because
Yeah.
the salvage value is only 5% of the actual value. So, and the best thing to do, the easiest thing to do is just go in and just do away with it completely. But when you do that, then there's your utility companies, which continually have to install all this equipment. And then your ratepayers, your taxpayer has to,
That was the relation back to coal that I was talking about. If we got rid of it from the windmills, then all of a sudden we had the problem with all this equipment he's talking about on the coal plants. Well, like you said, then everyone's utility bills would have to go up to compensate that and it would be a whole mess.
because everything we can do now is just try to fight off all the
hangers on.
Trying to keep everyone else from jumping in on the bandwagon.
It doesn't, and the lady, there's 2,600 bills. Like I said, a little over 2,600 bills introduced, and we only have we're down there for 60 days. And to say that there's a lot going on in 60 days is an understatement. Because, you're meeting with your county officials are down there. I meet with them all the time and I, represent 8 counties and, we're meeting with stakeholders on bills and we're having session, we're having regular committee meetings, and then we're having caucus. And so there's a lot going on. And I can't speak for these guys, but I know I spend a lot of time in 60 days addressing bills that will never, ever see the light of day. We call them crazy bills. Some of them not crazy bills. Some of them are really good bills, but they're just not going anywhere because leadership, because to be honest, there's just a small group on both bodies, the House and the Senate, that sort of, I'm not going to say makes the decisions, but they do make the decision what's going to run, what's not going to run. So we spend a lot of time addressing bills that, will never go anywhere. And, but it's part of the process. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but so, I urge you, if something, if a crazy bill comes up, contacts, because most of the time, because first part of session, all we deal with Senate bills, all they deal with is House bills. And people contact me about, vote no on House Bill 2747. Okay, what's 4727, because I have no idea what's going on in the House at that point. And then, so then I gotta go and I gotta look up what bill it is. And then, I'll look at it and I'll say, don't worry about it. It's not gonna go.
It's not gonna make it out of the house, so don't worry about it.
Well, and it's the same way that them guys with the Senate bill, but it's just, it's pretty overwhelming sometimes trying to keep up with everything that's going on in 60 days because.
And if the leadership goes to 3 committees, that means it's dead.
Yeah.
It will not come out.
I think Commissioner Stone has a question.
I do, and it's really it would be more of a focusing forward statement for you guys to just kind of think about. Maybe you already have. But, you know, I think it's wonderful. 5% raise for state employees, I think it's wonderful. We tried to do something similar, and it's not comparing apples to apples when you look at a county versus a state budget. But the concept, you know, when we do and we've done in the past where we've raised people 2 or 3%, that's what everybody got. We didn't do anything. That's not helping the problem. And I look at the state 5% as the same thing. When you look at 5% across the board, your rich just keep getting richer. And so we are having trouble retaining. We are having trouble with our state road employees here in Preston County because the way they formulate things, everybody gets the same amount of money for maintenance. We need more employees. We need 3 times the employees they need in some of these smaller counties, but we all get the same pot of money. And that's a struggle for us here to some degree. And I have been a part of some dialogue where, you know, they're infusing extra money for special projects and this and that. But I'm going to go back to the wage here. Because when we get that 5%, is there any way for you guys, when you're thinking about those raises, to say, you know what, let's pull out state road workers and let's pull out these? Because if WVU and other organizations are looking at more career, technical way to educate for some of these things that we're lacking workforce on, then why would we not put more money in those positions specifically to raise those wages up to be competitive with private industry? Because the issue is never going to get better if we just carte blanche give everybody a specific, percentage of an increase. We had to look, it was hard. Our budget this year was extremely hard. We did 3% for people that we didn't raise up in other areas, but we had to put more money in enforcement. We had to put more money in specific areas. And it doesn't resonate well with all of our elected officials. But if we don't, we can't compete. We can't keep them. So I'm just asking, looking forward at raises, when you guys go into these sessions, can we draw the line and pull out some of these where we are really, really struggling and infuse money? And I know you would have to get creative, but if we don't, and we don't look at breaking up everybody gets the same thing, let's be fair, and that's the safe and political thing to do, then we're just going to continue down this rabbit hole of losing people on the bottom. And those are very important jobs. Senator Smith and others work very hard on road issues. And it's like, you just keep beating it. And we always go back to, we don't have the workforce and they can go somewhere else and get money. Well, let's come up with a plan to do something about that. And we might make someone up here a little bit angry about it, but someone's got to fall on the sword somewhere along the line to make that change, to transition, because those are very important jobs that
Well,
We did that. We do that. We did it with corrections because we had to bring National Guard in so we had to raise corrections. I mean, it was a substantial raise. State police, we was losing state police and we wasn't been able to recruit state police. So we gave them, what was a $10,000 raise plus the 5% because we was training them, they was going to another state, become a state police, or they just wasn't interested because they could go to a county and make as much money as some of these richer counties. So we had to do that. So we do that, and we have.
So we do pick out a lot of specific groups each year and give them pay raises. We started with corrections and police because they're so critical. I mean, we had a state of emergency with the National Guard in the prisons. Are they still in there? We finally get them out.
There's few in and out.
Yeah, that's getting phased out, but that's not free either. That was $27 million a year or whatever.
Yeah.
We're paying the National Guard to be in there. So we are doing that, exactly what you're saying to an extent, but overall, because of increases to PEIA, whatever, we still every year have needed to give 4 or 5%, whatever we've been given now for 4 or 5 years to everybody to even if that's just treading water, at least you're treading water and not sinking.
Sure.
And all of these raises cost tens of millions or over $100 million. How much do we give to corrections? Was 30 to 50 million or something like that just for corrections, where we don't even have a facility in our county, state corrections. So like, we don't see it necessarily here in Preston, but the whole state, I mean, we have to do it. And we send our people who get arrested to these facilities. So, and police officers, I mean, everywhere, we were having an emergency with police officers. They were just quitting, there just weren't enough of them. So doing what you're doing is logical, and we are doing it incrementally. We just can't do it all in one
Right.
year.
Right. Well, and you know, I guess where it just gets really kind of frustrating is I try to flip it around and see it from the other perspective. I always go in that way, looking at the perspective of the lawmakers and who's making these choices. And, you know, when we have these state road workers, I'm just going to go back to it. When we have these state road workers, it's not that they're truly out there complaining about their wages. Mentality on our workforce and these people coming up through the system and that are going into the workforce has really changed over the last 5 to 10 years. And the amount of money it takes is $14 an hour is a struggle for a man to provide for his family. And I try to flip it, you know, the insurance, the benefit, the retirement packages, that all of those things, that means something, because just because I'm making $14 an hour doesn't mean that I don't have great benefits. But this day and age, people don't look at planning for the future because things are so expensive right now. They look for the right now and that take home pay, and they can't make it on that take home if they have a young family with all the rising costs and increases. So I'm just saying in the next session, or when you guys get the opportunity to take a look at not that 5%, and it needs to be looked at. Yes, enforcement and all these other things are critical, but our roads are critical too. Our enforcement have to have infrastructure to run across, and it takes these people in the ditches to be able to clean them. We don't have enough people in the ditches because who wants to do that work, put their lives at risk on the highways with people flying up and down the roads for starting $12 to $14 an hour with mandatory retirement coming out and all these things. They can't buy groceries for that. And then so it's a struggle. And so I'm just asking for you to flip that and really focus on that, because if we can get focused on that, I feel like some of the other things will work themselves out as well. So just, you know, it's important. Randy knows it's important. I just don't like going to people and say, well, they just don't pay enough and we don't have enough workers, so you're just gonna have to deal with it, because how long are we gonna have to keep dealing with it, right? So that's all. So just focus forward. Let's see if we can
But
maybe,
there's so many,
there are.
you know, we're losing state mine inspectors. I mean, in our district alone, I think, they've lost seven or eight within the last 3 or 4 months, because they can go, you know, they start out like 54,000. They can go into the private industry and start out at 150,000 a year. So, and we can't afford to pay $150,000 for inspectors. So and that's, you know, nurses at the state hospitals, or, you know, anybody at the state hospitals. I mean, we can't hire people. And, you know, we're paying, we just gave, what was it,
$100 some million.
$100 million for contract nurses to keep our state hospitals operating. So, you know, it's not only state road work.
It's on and on.
It just goes on and on. It's just such a, you know, and like I said, and it gets worse and worse because inflation gets worse. And, you know, and a lot of people, I agree with you, a lot of people, they don't care about their benefits.
No.
You know, it used to, when I started, probably a lot of, you know, I say people here close to my age. And, but, you know, benefits was a big thing. That's, everybody wanted to go to work for state because they had great benefits. You know, everybody knew they didn't pay much.
Even the county.
Yeah, county, you know, because of the benefit, but the new generation, the benefits don't seem to, you know, even in the mining industry, you know, I retired from it in July, but, you know, we had 100% insurance, you know, I mean, you know, Cadillac plan, but we would lose 4 or 5 people a week because another coal company who had 80/20 insurance and didn't have, you know, dental or didn't have that.
Pay them a little
But
bit
they
more.
paid $1 more an hour. So they left all those benefits for $1 more an hour, you know, and I just don't know how you.
Well, with your one last thought, with the representation, with our representation, for Preston County, we have to recognize and fight for that we are different. We're different. Our county, there's a lot of rural counties, but we're different. We have a lot more to cover, a lot, our schools suffer because of how rural we are. We don't have just one school. We have a lot of schools. We have, so with that take that when you go back and just remember that if our state road workers had a little bit more, if we could get them to separate us out, even stick us in a different district where we're not competing with the Mons and the Harrisons and other people. I'm not saying that the state has not went leaps and bounds to interject more money into Preston County on special in addition to our funding projects, because we've seen a lot in 5 years. But we've got to focus on getting some more. And so we're going to have to raise that up just a little bit somehow. And, maybe it's different in different counties. It should be different, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I have 8 counties and 7 of them are rural counties.
Sure.
And probably every other, Preston's one of my biggest counties, least rural counties out of my,
50 square miles.
so it's just not, but the thing is, okay, let's take Tucker County and Grant County, for example, into very rural counties, more so than Preston County even. But they don't have a problem. They got a waiting list for people coming to work for State Road because they don't have the opportunity. They're out there in the middle of nowhere where they can't travel to Morgantown. They can't travel to Uniontown, to Oakland, Maryland, to go to work. So those jobs are, people are really.
Yeah.
So West Virginia is a rural state and there's a lot of rural counties. So.
One of in my committee, we are working on locality pay. And the reason we're doing that is because in the Eastern Panhandle, they couldn't get people to go there because the cost of living was so much higher. And if the state, we're just looking into that, but you gotta think how your retirement works. Well, everybody, if we raise that there, then everybody's going to want to be there the last 3 years of their. So you gotta make it, if it's locality pay, it doesn't affect your retirement. So there's a lot to go into, but we do have a special committee, group of guys people that are trying to figure out a way. Once they do that, then this locality pay will affect, when you do anything, it affects the whole state. And so there's parameters that they gotta take into effect, what starts your locality pay and stuff. We were real big on it this year, and we was going to try to do something for the state police because the state police is under Homeland Security, and that's the reason why it came through me. And I thought that's what they wanted, but right now, the state police, since we give them that $10,000 raise and, this 5%, they are pretty well satisfied. They haven't had as much trouble getting people to go there because of that. Their recruitment has really went up. I believe their last class was full of their training. So it's that we can see that money does make a difference, and it gets people in it. But we are working on that locality. The deal with the state road, we give everybody 5%, but that doesn't count for the state road.
Okay.
Employees. It goes to this how's that work, Randy? It goes to the state and it goes to the the higher up, and then they decide how they give it to
That
them.
happens in our county government too, and that's it's right, but it's wrong. It's wrong because when you say this is what we want, everyone gets 3% or 5% or whatever, there's a difference. It's a cost of living or it's a specialty, increase. And so we have elected officials, as I know you guys do the same thing. They have people that have to have a specialized training or education to do some of these jobs, and they're not making what they could make if they went to private enterprise and did it, and the benefits aren't that to keep them anymore. You know what I mean? So, I get what you're saying. We just somehow, we're going to have a committee to work a little bit more specific on some of these issues.
one of the main problems that I see with the benefits, and I don't know, there's probably some controversial arguments about it, but the vested insurance or your vested retirement
Yeah.
went from 5 years to 10 years. To a young person, that's a lot. You know, that's a big thing for somebody to say, well, in 5 years, I can be vested in this insurance. I'll stick around for 5 years. But they look at 10 years and it's not worth it. And the same thing with sick time. You know, they could take that sick time and use it for service time or use it, and it meant something that they could accumulate that sick time. Now it's like, oh, I got day and a half sick time. I'm gonna have this day off for sick time here and this half day off for sick time here every month. And then you have to have somebody else to cover for that lack of
Yeah,
employees.
That's for teachers was a big deal. When was it in 07 or 08? They have a different sick pay. Always before that, they could accumulate that and then they could retire if they were there. What they're finding out, it's much cheaper to let them accumulate that than it is to pay what do you call it? Substitute.
Somebody to cover for what they're not coming.
Yeah, because now they're paying it twice.
Right.
Yeah.
I have heard, to your point, I've heard this discussed, this past session. It is something that's being looked at. I'm not on the education committee, but it's something I've heard others
Good.
talk about.
Good,
And it is being looked at.
thank you.
Yeah, it is for teachers in that retirement.
But it needs to be for county employees as well.
And you gotta realize too, we represent, I mean, there's only just a certain amount of state employees we represent, only county employees. We represent a large majority of private who doesn't have sick days. They, you know, some of them don't even have vacation.
Right.
You know, they don't get snow days. They don't get this, you know what I mean? It's nice. I'm all for the benefit packages because, you know, I was fortunate I had it even in the private sector. But I'm just saying, a lot of people, we get a lot of flack. I know I do, and I'm sure the rest of them do, you know, because, well, you know, why should we have to pay for that? We don't get any of those services, you know, but they're, so.
People don't see it as a benefit.
No, they don't.
As an entitlement. And
It's,
that's a huge difference.
It's,
Take that as their compensation. That's what they're
we
reserved.
we have to make a lot of tough decisions over the years. We take a lot of beating, not only us, our families. I mean, even my wife just, you know, this IDD waiver thing, man, she got, you know, beat on, and she doesn't even know what the IDD waiver is, but man, it's a tough job. We take a beating all the time. Sometimes, you know, it just, especially after session, when we get back from session, it's just like you just said, why do I even try? Why do I even do it? Why do, you know? And it's because we care. You know, we got children, we got grandchildren, you know, we're trying to make things better. But we're going to be an SOB to the majority, you know, like one way or the other, whatever our decision is. It's not as easy job for everybody to be doing it, I guess.
Yeah, I just want to really thank you guys for taking time out of your private time to come in and talk to us. And I know there's been a few comments online as well. Everyone was very happy to hear what you had to say. We got one more question.
Comment.
Yes, one comment.
With Allegheny closing down, why doesn't the state road try to recruit those laid off?
They did.
They did.
They
I
hired.
think Robbie
They hired some.
and Christie and them.
Yeah, they
I
did.
think they got 3 that could pass the drug test.
I think I heard 7.
I was going to use the word recruit because I know the job fair, some of them didn't want to be more than 15 or 20 minutes away from here. We
I
got,
know they had a job fair for them and they tried to.
They've had a couple job fairs,
that's why I'm saying use.
but they did recruit.
Recruit, maybe if you went after them and said, oh, yeah, would you come along with us? Maybe they would be willing. But you say only 2 or 3?
It wasn't very many. The
That
main
passed
thing, what they were looking for is CDL drivers, you
Yeah.
know, and that, so a lot of those guys didn't have it.
Mhm.
And then.
Just not manual labor?
I don't know about there, but I know anytime you go to recruit and they're if they're drivers or work equipment, you gotta pass a drug test.
Right.
And it's hard to find people. They'll just get up and leave.
Yeah. like
And
a
it-
forklift
and that's
operator, I mean, you can't do it like
Got
that
to
drug
beat
test.
this drug thing
Mhm.
We
somehow.
could solve the drug problem, we would probably solve 80%,
Yeah.
probably 90% of our problems we have in the state as far, I mean, I'm talking workforce, domestic violence, foster care, you name it.
Oh, my, yeah.
Everything is linked to the drug epidemic and and we need to get, I mean, we need to get tough with it, but you know, nobody wants to get tough because, you know, I had an idea of, if you know, because we have some of these people that they're have children and then lose them,
Mhm.
and then they're have more children, and then they're lose them, and then they're have more children, and you know, the state pays for all this. And I was going to introduce a bill, I didn't because I got crucified before I ever introduced it. But, okay, if you've lost children, okay, and you have more children and you get caught for drugs again,
Mhm.
then to get a reduced sentence, if you would voluntarily get either
Sterilized.
your tubes tied or vasectomy, then reduce their prison term. But I was called Hitler and everything else because I was sterilizing, but it was all volunteer, you know what I mean? You do this and.
If you do this, here's the carrot, you get a lesser.
Solve the
treatment.
drug problem, but it keeps from bringing more children into
Mhm.
to the system, you know what I mean? So, but you know, like I said, anytime you come up with, you know, I have one, there's, you know, 2 strikes, you're out, you know, you lose your child and you go through everything and you get them back, which that's the way, you know, that's what you want. You want the kid,
Mhm.
but that doesn't happen that often. And you lose them again after you lost them second time, that's it. You know, they're put up for adoption and, you know, because the kids is the one that's paying the
Yeah,
ultimate price. I mean, you can see it in our school system. That's why, you know, behavior problems, you know, we're just now seeing the effects of the drug babies, you know, that has development skill
Mhm.
problems. And it's just such a huge problem. And it just really breaks my heart with the children, because the children are the ones that, you know, the adults aren't being adults.
Mhm.
And with, you know, in their defense, a lot of them didn't have much of a upbringing when they was children. So it just, you know, I don't know. And it's all comes right back to the drug problem. And if someone, you know, if someone could tell me how to fix the drug problem, I'd even just step away and say, here, you take my job and fix it. Because if we could, you know, but I don't, you know, it's just getting worse, you know, with the open borders now, the drug problem is just compounding. So.
One of the things that's didn't mention was about discipline in the schools. We did have a bill this year that would work on that. And it was one that was still laying on the desk as one of 3 when the Democrats filibustered at the last night. The Senate had passed it and all we had to do was bring it up and it would have passed. But that was one about discipline for even going down into the grade schools. And another one that didn't make it through was they had to put a plaque up that said, "In God We Trust." And it was another one that was died because of the filibuster.
And that bill, even with the, you know, Senator Grady, she's the one that, she's a public school teacher, and she's the one that introduced that bill. And she even got, you know, I mean, huge,
There's so much
pushback
coordinating going
from
on.
teachers that didn't want it, or, you know, principals that didn't want it, or Board of Education that didn't want it. So, you know, it's never, it's never easy. You know, because you think her being in the classroom every day, you know, because that's who I'm on education issues. And, but then you got other teachers contacting you, say, that's the worst bill ever, you know, hold a kid responsible for that. So.
Any other comments or questions?
Hopefully no.
Well, once again, thank you guys. We appreciate your time.
If anybody wants a list of this, put your email, write your email address here and I'll email you a copy, but I'm gonna give